attaching the buttons to the motherboard now. So essentially, when you're getting close to done, the reason I have the motherboard facing this way, if you notice, is I'll flip it down. Here is pin 1, or I'm sorry, pin 32, and this is pin 1. So, and the cartridge reader does have to go in the specific way. Remember, you pulled it off the motherboard this way, like this. So essentially it flips down into it right there, like that. So that's why I have this motherboard facing upside down. Not only that, when I plug in the screen later, it makes it a lot easier to fit in because the ribbon cable and how it's placed. So it does make it a lot easier fitting in that screen later as well. And then also tying up, once again, my tactile switches go to right there, you know, so there's that. So the motherboard's gonna seat like this. And at this point, we're moving on to the buttons. Now, there's two ways to go about this, and I'm going to go ahead and move this over. Couple of things you can do. One thing, I ordered this Common Ground PCB from Kishbent for 12 bucks. And what it is, it's a button panel for your DMG Game Boy. It's really simple though, because rather than when you cut your PCB, and I'll show you that here in a second, you have to reroute the common ground lead for every button. Whereas this has a common ground right here, and then you just have to trace the lines to the correct button source. So rather than having roughly 16 wires, you only have 9. And once again, it's great in management of wires and trying to fit everything in the case. Because you can come in, and once again it's labeled on the back too, which is nice. You can solder in from the bottom to the top and just have the little nubs there. And I'd hot glue that once I'm done, but it fits in perfectly to the DMG. So you see there, you even have your screws tie downs that you can still tie through. So it's good news there. Now, one thing I did before I found out about this Kishbent panel, and once again, this was really just trial and error. I cut the PCB, so you'll see that there. So what that is I went ahead, and because we're only concerned about the buttons, I mean, we're not really concerned about the rest of this motherboard at this point. We're just essentially using it for the current it can conduct. Went ahead and cut straight across, even behind this. Cut across the button board to make sure that I have all these buttons still here. So cut right across the center. Kept the buttons there, so see that. And what I did is I noticed that there's this black adhesive. It looks like insulation to this to make sure they're conductive and also work with the conductive pads. I noticed above each one there was also still the same thing. So what I went ahead and did is I took my X-Acto and I scraped at it, and I noticed that it was copper leads. So it led me to believe, and because there's no better example of this, it led me to believe that, once again, it shows for, you know, power and then ground. So once again, power, ground for each one. So I went ahead, scraped the copper off, then I used my rotary tool, and I have this small bit. Can't even explain it, but you can see there the little hole that I messed up on right there. I went ahead and I drilled through the PCB, still leaving the copper, so that it had conductivity, and I did that for each one. Now, what you're going to notice here though is, at least for the start button, there's not 2 of those little black circle pads there. There's only 1, and that's because if you follow this trace all the way up, it comes to the down ground too. So the down button and start share a common ground together. So if you notice here, I have everything soldered in, wired up through the back, kind of like you would do with the Kishbent board. So it shares a common ground with start. Other than that, when I had tried this out, I had thought that I had to use all 4 of the leads for the A and B buttons. It turns out you just need to make 1 a ground and 1 a power. So you don't necessarily need all of these, but just 2. And that will create the A and B button to work as well. So you can see there for both A and B. So there's 1, 2, and when my conductive pad touches, it sends the signal off to the Game Boy SP motherboard, and it actually works. So with this right here though, you're not gonna have to buy anything, but it is gonna take some time, as well as there's a lot of wires that come with it. So just be wary about it if you're gonna do that. Like I said, I wanted a more fluid look, so I went ahead and got this instead. But it is possible to use the original PCB. And if you're gonna go the Kish Bent way, it's very simple. You're gonna notice here, I'm just gonna pull the motherboard off so you can see. There's a couple ways you can do this. Once again, common ground. Common ground, what I use for my common ground is right here. You're gonna see pin 6. Pin 6 on extension port 1, which is this farthest left pin. That pin right there is ground. So I also grounded my Kish Bent board to that ground port. I know pin 6, which is on this side of extension port 2, is also a ground port. There's just a ton of them. So one of two ways you can do this is you can go ahead and for each line, so left, if you notice here, I have the board facing right side up now the correct way. These are tactile switches too. They're just flat tactiles. And you'll notice right there, if I can get it to focus, right there, 1, 2, 3, those right there. So 1 and 3, it's connected. It's all one line. So 2 and 4 are connected. It's your normal tactile switch. So right there, all we need to do is, since we have a common ground already lined up, we just need to go ahead and to pin 1 of every one of these buttons is where we would go ahead and line that up. Or you can go to the actual test points, which you'll see here and right in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, this would be your up, down, left, right. You're gonna have TP1 for B and TP0 for A. So TP1 is B, TP0 is A. So that's how you connect that. And then right here, we got TP2 and TP3. So this is TP3, it's start, and TP2 is select. So you could go ahead and mount those wires right there as well. Now for the brightness toggle switch, because if you can see here, I got mine mounted on the side right there, so turns up and down the brightness. What I did, this was from a scrap motherboard. I went ahead and just used my rotary tool and cut it off, but this is just an example, because once again I did use those tactile switches from Fry's Electronics that I showed you earlier, because they were a little bit longer. But all I did was go ahead and put it into the side of the shell right here. Put it in the side right there, so it sticks out of the hole right there, and that's what gives me my brightness control. And once again, all you need to do is ground and power it. So you have power, ground, and you would just go ahead and attach power to either pin 1 or pin 3 and ground to either pin 2 or pin 4 at the bottom of the brightness switch, and it'll give you the ability to go ahead and control the brightness of your Dmg-101. Now just want to once again just kind of show you, I originally mounted the tactiles there. I ended up switching that so I could go ahead and once again keep my screw ports. So I made my own tactile switches down there instead. Got my brightness switch on the side right there. On the inside, this one I personally like where I mounted the extension 1 and extension 2 ports, because they sit flush almost with the casing. And then if you were to go ahead and mount the volume, and once again, this is just for example, but when the case is closed, volume fits right in there. So you can actually seat the volume button kind of behind the plastic here, and it will sit in there, and you'll just see that the little nub sticking out, and you can move it up and down, side to side. So I would definitely recommend routing extension 1 there, extension 2 there, the volume to the other side. I would definitely go ahead and put your brightness switch up there, and then as far as your left and right tactile, I mean anywhere in the case that feels comfortable to you, because they're relatively small, they're not that big. And then of course you're gonna want to go ahead and for your power switch, mount that up here. And then what I did was, this is a switch from the original Game Boy Advance. I clipped the little nub that sits right there that holds the cartridges into the Game Boy. Once again, this was just so I could go ahead and play my Game Boy Color games without having to worry, because that would stop it from happening, stop it from turning on. So yeah, this is going to conclude my semi-introduction into the Dmg-101. I mean, I could go over all the soldering points and show you. It would take quite a while. I'm assuming the tech-savvy people can understand from what I said how to do this exactly. With this one that I finished, I kind of just blacked out this port, put my brightness there, I put my volume right there, and my extension port 2 there, and I mounted from the bottom, since I don't use headphone jack ever and I didn't really feel like adding it in and going through more soldering, more trying to fit the case in. I put the charging extension port right there at the bottom. It feels a lot better when I'm playing it too, as far as charging it while I'm playing. And then yeah, left and right tactile switches down here at the bottom. It's good. Hit them with my pinky, no problem. So this is Dmg-101 SP mod. Thanks for watching.